Hi, I'm Shanna K. Covey, one of the facilitators here with the Emergent platform. And I wanted to come on today and talk about the topic of orienting on your soul journey. I feel like this is like a really interesting thing to look at because what happens is the world's conditioning is so strong up until this point that we start to get this nudge to go on this soul path that we really, until we get super anchored in that soul journey, the conditioning of the world is still going to have a pull on us. So when I was thinking about that, I was trying to put myself in the shoes of being early in this journey and beginning in this journey and thinking about what ultimately at this point in time is keeping me more just embodied and anchored in how I see life from the overall soul journey, the soul remembrance or this journey of awakening. And a lot of it has to do with my entire perspective has shifted. And so this, if you look at like the conditioning of the world as, let's just say this is the conditioning of the world, it's an orbit. And right now it's still primarily fear-based. And then as you go into a soul journey, obviously we're trying to release a lot of that fear from our journey. So you have another orbit over here. So there's like two different energetic orbits that you could be attuning to. And so let's say you are attuning to initially the fear-based one, and then you're working your way to fully attune to the other one until it becomes your predominant one. There's this kind of in-between stage where you're still kind of getting pulled here before you can fully anchor over here. And I just wanted to bring that to light because that may be something that you don't recognize is going on. And there can be some tips on how you can solidify kind of your choosing of being in the soul in the orbit around the soul journey. So one thing that I can see in my own journey is that my entire perspective on life is oriented on the soul and the soul's growth. And so what that looks like differently in the fear-based conditioning or the conditioning of the world, I guess I don't need to continually say fear-based, is that a lot of that is looking at the seeing ourselves as this three-dimensional person moving through life, and we're looking at keeping ourselves safe, however we feel, however we define that. Safe could still be being something important in the world, or it could be, hiding from the world. It can be all these different things, but these drivers are very much oriented on not necessarily on how the soul, what is most important to the soul's growth in the journey. Let's put it that way. And so some of the things that I wanted to share in anchoring on the soul journey is that I'm constantly oriented on looking at my reactive nature. So if something comes up in an interaction with someone else or just becoming reactive on my own, I'm always looking at that through this spiritual lens of how does that look for the soul? Not what is normal for conditioning of the world. The normal conditioning of the world is to blame the person that you perceive as causing the reaction. Whereas the soul orientation is always going to take responsibility for whatever your reaction may be and shifting that. And I don't really want this to become necessarily a teaching on what that looks like. It's just more that there is a solid perspective on how you move through life when you're oriented on soul growth versus just blindly kind of allowing your reactive nature to take over how you operate. Another thing that I do is that I orient on what does it look like to move up this journey of awakening? What does it look like in of relating to the higher qualities of spirit? So for me, it's really important is to orient on the highest quality, the fruits of the spirit, if you will. So we're looking at orienting on love, like unconditional love in the ways that we can, in wisdom, in joy, in forgiveness, in grace, in all in qualities of that nature. And when we start to orient there, we're already like it's through an intention that we are choosing to live in alignment with that. And so when we do look at what's going on under the surface or in our reactive nature, we already have this orientation that we desire to be coming from these qualities. And so if something comes and out, as coming from that reactive nature where we're automatically going to have a way in which to process that and to move through it. And again, that can be a separate teaching, but the point is that that lens is there to pull you through it. And we're oriented on, hold on, I'm looking at my notes a little bit as I go. And I'm looking at, instead of it being so linear of like, whatever this linear process may be, you go, you find your career, you move up in your career, you get a house, then you go to the bigger house, whatever this kind of linear journey might be, I'm actually not focused on that. I'm focused on what is the soul needing to evolve, to be more present in my life. And so that is really a completely different orientation. And it's not to say that you can't still move with those linear desires at all. It's just that there is a priority on what is the soul desiring to learn and what is the soul desiring to move through. And I also am oriented on purpose from the perspective of when I'm living from those higher qualities that I just mentioned, that to me is purposeful. That to me is desirable. And so anything that reconciles me being outside of that to bringing myself back into alignment with that, that is also, in my opinion, seen as purposeful. So I am already tying myself to a purpose in my daily life, and that is a strong orientation for me, and that is also fulfilling for me to feel that and to move in that direction. And so we're wanting to collapse the inconsistencies between reacting from this old, like, old orbit that used to have a pull on us and moving more from this orbit that's oriented in the soul nature. And also, I'm always taking care of things as they build up. So I don't let a lot of um, resentment build up. I don't let a situation that I haven't dealt with continue to build up in me without addressing it. I have this maintenance that's going on quite consistently. I'm scanning. It's very obvious to me if I'm reacting from something that I have not taken responsibility for. It's such a it's it hits my radar really quickly, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And what I notice is someone who maybe isn't oriented in that direction, it might take longer for things to build up before they begin to address them, which means there's a lot more disentangling to do. And it can almost be overwhelming, like, oh, because they have let it build up so much. But as you oriented on your soul journey, there's going to be this maintenance that just naturally occurs because you're already seeing through this one particular lens. You're willing to look at things through that lens, and you're willing to course correct in the ways that you need to course correct. So that's another thing. And when you hear things in the collective that maybe there's a general consensus around complaining about something in the world or something in your relationship or something in life that you maybe were connecting to others who also complain in that regard. When you start to orient on your soul nature, that stuff's going to not be as prominent in your awareness. You're not going to be hooking into that energy. As you're not going to want to hook into that kind of energy. So that's another anchor point. And also just feeling this connection to being of service in the world. And that doesn't necessarily look like being connected to a specific mission related to service, but it's being connected to service of knowing that as you're purifying your own energy and connecting to these higher qualities or fruits of the spirit, as you're doing that, that is purposeful not only for you individually, but in the collective. I feel a great orientation of being here, and by here I mean here in earth in this incarnation, being connected to the collective awakening that's going on. And so I know that my inner work translates to my energy going up in frequency, which then emits a higher frequency into the world, which then helps the collective because more I'm contributing to the higher frequency of anyone else who's contributing to that frequency. And ideally, we're all working together to change the collective unconscious, that initial orbit I was talking about, to being a much more a collective conscious orbit, if you will, one that's based in love. And so we are oriented, like as a light worker, as someone on the soul journey, we are oriented in helping this orbit become the main one in the collective. But it takes commitment and intentionality at this point in time because of that other orbit that can still be so strong in the collective. So anything that's related to purifying where you're coming from, purifying what is underneath all of your particular looping reactive nature, anything like that, that type of purification is always going to help you oriented more on a soul journey and also align up with the higher qualities of spirit and help with the collective awakening. And so this is looking like as you get deeper, as you feel more committed to a soul journey, you're going to automatically live with this desire for these higher spiritual goals. And by higher spiritual goals, that's where I'm talking about bringing your overall energetic state to ground in those higher qualities as much as possible. And also, until we're awakened, we're not really going to be permanently ground in God or ground in those higher qualities, but it's the willingness to look at what's taking us outside of that state through whenever we're reactive. It's the willingness to take responsibility for it, to notice it, to take care of any negative residue that may have occurred with another or with yourself. It's willing to forgive yourself for perceiving something incorrectly. It's willing to apologize, take responsibility for if you did get reactive towards someone, you take responsibility and you apologize and you like have this renewal in you that's willing to begin again. You're not carrying the I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. Like you're releasing all of that and you're coming from this clean energy state, coming forward from that more pure place through that same intention that you're holding. There's also, I also want to share a prayer that I learned in A Course in Miracle years ago when I studied that. That's a very prominent spiritual text that's had a huge influence in my perspective in my journey. And there's a prayer in it that is just so beautiful to orient you on service every day. This is not part of the prayer, but this is something I say prior to saying the prayer. I say, God, I'm here to do good. I'm here to spread the good, the holy, and the beautiful. And then I go into the prayer, which is, God, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? And then you open up to what wants to come through you and just stay open. Like you don't have to super wonder like, wait, was that it? Was that it? Was that it? You just really allow a flow to occur and you're open yourself to being a conduit for God to work through, for higher energy to work through. And really, that is a strong orientation on soul remembrance, on the soul journey, is using your life in service in that way and opening yourself to that. So you can be, quote unquote, the right hand of God in all these different moment to moment ways. And so I just think that is a beautiful prayer that I have used for, the last 15 years to help just stay oriented in this way and to stay open. I used that prayer this morning and that's what's led to this talk. That's what's led to thinking of even this topic to share with you today. I also have an intention that I do set each day as well, which I say, I desire. So you start with your desire and your intention. I desire to be loving no matter what arises. Now, I know I'm not in a state to where that is perfected in any way, but I set that as a desire and I set that as an intention because that's a part of my higher spiritual goal. And within that same goal, I also say, and I'm open and willing to notice where I'm out of alignment with this. I'm willing to take responsibility for that. I'm willing to, as I said earlier, to take care of any negative residue left with another. And I'm willing to begin again. So that's another way that I stay kind of absorbed in that soul orientation, in that soul journey. I also see life as Earth School, which goes with all the things that we were talking about earlier. When we start to utilize looking at our reactive nature through the lens of we're here in Earth School, we start to utilize everything on the orientation of a soul. So we're experiencing duality in this incarnation here on Earth with the intention of coming, into some alignment with unity consciousness. So when we're doing that, we're putting a lens on how we're observing our life, how we're willing to course correct. And so this is constant can be a pull back towards that desired alignment. Let's see what else. Mm, Sorry, just looking at a few notes. I took some notes earlier today. This is probably a lot of information that I've shared with you, and there are this is me expressing a deep orientation with a soul journey, with certain higher specific spiritual goals that I have set for myself in my life that I feel a connection to. And so wherever you find yourself on this trajectory between being drawn to soul remembrance, and there, of course, is some draw there because you're in a group that is focused on soul remembrance. So there's a draw there. But I'm curious, like to start for you to contemplate and to ask yourself, kind of where are you in that trajectory between like being pulled by the world's view on so many things and really solidifying your alignment with soul remembrance. It doesn't matter where you are in that trajectory, all is good, all is ultimately bringing us into this greater alignment. But it could be interesting to ask yourself or to notice maybe this conversation will bring a contemplation to your mind regarding your own commitment towards it, regarding how often are you pulled by the world's thinking, the world's conditioning, and how committed are you on the soul orientation? Do you find yourself interested in soul remembrance, but then start to like forget it as you're going through your life and fall back into kind of a habitual reaction, getting, maybe there's some looping pattern with your husband or wife that you keep letting go on and you complain to your friends about, but maybe there would be a way to cut through that looping pattern. And that's just one example of a looping pattern, but any pattern to bring yourself more into that soul orientation. Or maybe there's this, you find yourself in that complaining, kind of like wherever this group is complaining about something in the world, and you just find yourself like hearing it on Facebook or getting drawn into it in some way and just unconsciously kind of just going with it and putting an identification and energy in that direction. Well, how could you pull yourself out of that and really just kind of orient in another way? So I guess what it is not I guess what it is, what I'm suggesting is to start contemplating what you value. Like, where are you in this assessment with soul orientation? What would it take for you to move to a deeper alignment with it? Or how can you incorporate more of a soul orientation into your everyday life? And whatever I shared is not meant to be overwhelming. It's not meant to even set what I have shared as my goal as your goal. It's more to bring about a contemplation around what is your goal in relation to this, and how can you water that? How can you nourish that? How can you bring that more and more into your life so that you continue to be oriented in that particular manner? But that's what I wanted to share today. I will be coming back on as the nudge comes. I will keep my prayer open for what would you have me say? And I will come on here and I will share it. And I will catch you next time. I wanted to pop back on here and mention and extend an invitation to you that we are having conversations of this nature and modules that are specifically designed to help us orient in our soul remembrance on the membership. And myself and some of the other facilitators also offer one-on-one coaching services to serve you in this remembering. If that is something that you feel drawn to, definitely reach out through to me or to Shanna Schultz, and we will get you set up. This is just, that's another thing I wanted to share is, remember how I was talking about the fear-based orbit and then being on this new orbit, a soul orientation? That is so powerful in a group, whether it's a public group like we have right that could be sharing right here, or in the membership group. The idea is that you will be around like-minded people and you start to strengthen your connection to the soul-oriented orbit. And so that is what I wanted to jump on here and share.